October 11th, 1942, 11:32 p.m. Ironbottom Sound, north of Guadalcanal. The sea is black. Not dark, black, the kind that swallows light and sound alike. The moon is gone. Clouds hang low, pressing down on the water until the horizon disappears. On the bridge of the Japanese heavy cruiser Aoba, Vice Admiral Aratamo, Goto, scans the void through his binoculars, eyes trained by decades of night fighting doctrine. Nothing, just darkness, broken only by the faint white bow wake slicing forward at 30 knots. This is their domain. Japanese naval officers pride themselves on nights like this. They train for them, live for them. While other navies stumble blindly after sunset, the Imperial Japanese Navy believes it owns the dark. Superior optics, superior discipline, superior instincts. They have rehearsed night engagements since before the war began, firing torpedoes by feel, navigating by stars and memory. And tonight, they're certain of one thing. The Americans are nowhere near. Below decks, sailors whisper softly as shells are passed hand to hand. On the bridge, Goto lights a cigarette, shielding the flame with his palm. The glow flickers, then vanishes. He exhales smoke into the wind. Intelligence reports had placed U.S. ships far to the south. If the Americans were here, someone would have seen them. A silhouette, awake, a spark of light. Nothing. What Goto does not know, what none of the Japanese ships know, is that 7 American warships are already tracking them. Not by sight, not by sound, but by something the Imperial Navy still does not fully believe in. Radar, 20 miles to the east, aboard the U.S. light cruiser USS Helena. The Combat Information Center hums softly. Dim red lights illuminate faces slick with sweat. An enlisted radar operator leans forward, eyes locked on a glowing green scope. Bright blips slide steadily across the screen, moving exactly where they shouldn't be. Enemy ships, multiple, in column. Contact bearing 270, the operator calls out, voice tight. Range 19,000 yards. The Americans don't need binoculars. They don't need moonlight. They can see everything. Rear Admiral Norman Scott stands rigid on the bridge of USS San Francisco, knuckles white against the railing. He listens as bearings and ranges are fed to him in clipped, precise bursts. He doesn't look at the ocean. He looks inward, calculating. The Japanese are approaching Guadalcanal to bombard Henderson Field. If they succeed, the airstrip that keeps the Marines alive will go dark. This is the moment. Scott knows the risk. Radar is still new, untested in a real night fleet engagement. Some officers still distrust it, but the data is clear. The enemy is there, moving straight into his formation, and they have no idea they've been seen. Back on Aoba, Goto lowers his binoculars. Still nothing. He allows himself a small smile. Another night run. Another American airfield punished under cover of darkness. The Navy has done this before. Slipped in, fired, vanished before dawn. Then, without warning, the night explodes. A blinding flash rips across the water, followed by a concussive crack that slams into Aoba's hull like a giant fist. Another, and another. 6-inch shells tear through the air, glowing briefly before smashing into steel. Goto staggers as the bridge erupts in flame and shrapnel. A shell punches through the superstructure, detonating just feet away. Men are thrown like ragdolls. The cigarette is gone. The night, so trusted, so familiar, is suddenly full of fire. Enemy fire, someone screams. Where are they? No one can answer. Japanese lookouts frantically scan the darkness. There are no muzzle flashes, no visible ships, no warning torpedoes slicing the water. Just impact after impact, shells landing with terrifying accuracy. How can they see us? An officer shouts, voice cracking. They shouldn't be able to. Not like this. Below decks, alarms wail. Smoke fills passageways. Ammunition handlers stumble in the dark as compartments flood. The first shells have already crippled Aoba. Admiral Goto lies mortally wounded, blood pooling beneath him, still trying to understand what has happened. This isn't how night battles are supposed to go. On the USS Helena, the gunnery officer watches shell splashes bloom perfectly around the radar contacts. Corrections are made instantly. Firing solutions update in seconds. The enemy's course, speed, range, everything is known. For the first time in naval history, ships are firing accurately at targets they cannot see. American cruisers pour broadsides into the Japanese column. USS Boise, Salt Lake City, San Francisco. Their guns flash in disciplined rhythm, radar guiding every salvo. The night belongs to the Americans now. Japanese destroyers try to react, launching torpedoes blindly into the dark. They turn, maneuver, attempt to flee, but every move is tracked. Every course change followed. The Americans adjust calmly, methodically. This is not a duel. This is an ambush conducted by ghosts. Aboard Furitaka, shells rip open the engine rooms. Fires rage out of control. On Aoba, command collapses entirely. Confusion spreads faster than flame. Orders contradict each other. No one can identify the enemy's position. The doctrine they trusted, the training, the optics, the belief that night equals safety has betrayed them. 4 Japanese officers watching their ships burn, a terrible realization begins to take shape. The darkness no longer protects them, and whatever the Americans are using to see through it changes everything. As Aoba limps away, her decks strewn with the dead and dying, the surviving officers stare into the Black Sea with new fear. The ocean hasn't changed. The night is still the night. But something unseen now lives inside it. Something that watches. Something that waits. And this was only the first time. The survivors of Vice Admiral Goto's force retreat westward into the night. Engines coughing smoke, decks scorched and torn open. No pursuit lights follow them. No flares. Just silence. Worse than pursuit. Silence means the enemy is still out there, still watching. Aboard the damaged cruiser Aoba, officers gather around shattered instruments, faces lit by emergency lamps. Reports trickle in through static and confusion. It's taken from impossible ranges. No visual contact, no warning. The enemy fired first and fired accurately. One word begins circulating in hushed voices. Radar. For years, Japanese intelligence had known the Americans were experimenting with it. Crude sets, they believed. Unreliable. Too bulky. Useful for navigation, perhaps. Not for fighting. Certainly not for night combat. The sacred art the Imperial Navy believed it had perfected. But now the Americans had opened fire in total darkness and struck like they were firing at targets in daylight. At Rabaul, senior naval staff pour over after-action reports. The language is careful, restrained, but the meaning is unmistakable. The enemy detected the force at long range. They tracked course and speed. They fired first. They hit with precision. Someone asked the question no one wants to answer. How did they know exactly where we were? Across the Pacific on Guadalcanal itself, U.S. Marines feel the difference almost immediately. Japanese bombardment runs, once terrifyingly effective, become erratic. Less frequent, shorter. Ships that once appeared like phantoms after sunset now hesitate at the edges of the sound. The night is no longer safe. Inside American ships, confidence grows, but so does tension. Radar has worked, but every officer knows the Japanese will adapt. They always do. The question is whether radar can stay ahead of experience forged in decades of night fighting. That test comes only weeks later, November 12, 1942, just after midnight. Once again, Ironbottom Sound. Rain squalls roll through the channel, turning the sea into rippling steel. Visibility is abysmal. Lookouts strain until their eyes ache, seeing nothing beyond a few hundred yards. It is exactly the kind of night Japanese commanders once welcomed. This time, however, American ships are waiting. On the bridge of USS Helena, radar screens glow softly. Contact appear almost immediately, large, fast, closing. A powerful Japanese force. Battleship high, heavy cruisers, destroyers. Their mission is unmistakable. Smash Henderson Field and the American hold on Guadalcanal in one night of steel and fire. Rear Admiral Daniel Callahan knows his force is outmatched. His cruisers and destroyers are lighter, fewer, less heavily armed. But he has one advantage. He can see them. The Japanese cannot. As ranges close, American radar operators call out bearings. Their voice is steady but urgent. The plot is a living thing. Blips converging, lines intersecting. The enemy formation is clear as a diagram, but something begins to go wrong. Orders are misunderstood. Ships maneuver too tightly. In the confusion of darkness and rain, American formations blur. Callahan hesitates, trying to visually confirm what radar already knows. Precious seconds slip away. Then the fleets crash into each other at point-blank range. Muzzle flashes tear open the night. Searchlights snap on, cutting white tunnels through rain and smoke. Japanese and American ships fire almost blindly, silhouettes looming suddenly out of darkness like cliffs. For the Japanese, this feels familiar again, chaotic, brutal, close. This is the kind of night battle they understand. But radar is still there, feeding information even as shells scream overhead. American destroyers launch torpedoes guided by radar bearings. Cruisers fire through smoke they cannot see past, trusting unseen hands and glowing screens below decks. The battleship High is hit repeatedly, her steering crippled, her massive hull unable to maneuver in the confined waters. Japanese officers watch in disbelief as one of their most powerful ships staggers, wounded by opponents that should never have gotten this close, never have fired this accurately in such conditions. By dawn, Ironbottom Sound claims more wrecks. American ships burn. Japanese ships burn. The water fills with oil and debris and bodies. But High, the pride of the Imperial Navy, cannot escape. Daylight brings American aircraft, and by evening she is sunk by her own crew. The psychological damage cuts deeper than the steel. In Tokyo, the realization hardens. This was not luck. This was not chance. This was a system. Radar has turned the night into a battlefield where experience alone is no longer enough. No matter how sharp the optics, no matter how disciplined the crews, if the enemy sees first, the enemy fires first. Japanese engineers scramble to accelerate their own radar programs. Sets are rushed into service, often unreliable, poorly integrated, misunderstood by officers trained to trust their eyes. Doctrine lags behind technology. Tradition resists change, and the Americans do not stand still. New radar sets arrive. SG radar, more precise, better resolution. Combat information centers evolve from experimental spaces into the nerve centers of ships. Young officers learn to fight without ever seeing the enemy, to trust voices and screens over instinct. The night keeps changing. December, January, February. Each new engagement reinforces the pattern. Japanese ships are detected earlier. Ambushes fail. Surprise evaporates. Destroyer runs are met with preemptive fire. Torpedoes miss targets that maneuver before they should even know they're threatened. Veteran Japanese captains feel it's slipping away. The sense of control, the mastery of darkness they once possessed. One officer writes later, "We were fighting an enemy who seemed to know our intentions before we carried them out." The truth is worse. The Americans don't know intentions. They know positions. And in modern war, that is enough. By mid-1943, the transformation is undeniable. Radar-directed fire control becomes standard. American night actions grow cleaner, more lethal, less chaotic. The ocean after sunset no longer belongs to the boldest or the most experienced. It belongs to whoever can see without eyes. 4 Japanese officers who had built their careers on night combat. The change is existential. Everything they believed about naval warfare is being rewritten in real time by green glowing screens they cannot yet match. And as they struggle to catch up, a new truth begins to settle in. Quiet, heavy, unavoidable. The Americans didn't just steal the night. They industrialized it. And soon, radar will guide not just guns, but entire fleets toward a fate the Imperial Navy can no longer outrun. By early 1943, the veterans of the Imperial Japanese Navy can feel it in their bones. Something fundamental has shifted. The ocean is the same. The ships are the same. But the rules, the invisible rules that once governed night combat, are gone. A Japanese destroyer captain stands on his bridge off the coast of New Georgia, scanning a moonless horizon through binoculars polished to perfection. His crew is quiet, disciplined, alert. They have done this a dozen times before. Night approaches, and with it opportunity. Then a voice cuts through the stillness. American radar contact reported. No gunfire yet. No searchlights. Just the knowledge, somehow, that the enemy already knows they are there. This is the new reality. In briefings across the fleet, Japanese officers are warned to expect American fire at ranges once considered impossible at night. Destroyers begin zigzagging more aggressively. Cruisers hold fire longer, hoping to draw the enemy closer. Torpedo tactics are adjusted, but none of it restores the certainty they once had. Because radar does not get tired. It does not blink. It does not hesitate. During the Battle of Kula Gulf in July 1943, Rear Admiral Ainsworth's American force detects Japanese destroyers long before visual contact. Radar plots form, crisp and undeniable. The Americans open fire first, again. Shells crash into Jinsu, the Japanese flagship, tearing through her bridge and killing Rear Admiral Shunji Izaki almost instantly. Japanese sailors watch in horror as their command ship burns, hit by an enemy they could barely see. Even when Japanese torpedoes find their mark, as they sometimes do, the pattern remains unchanged. Surprise is harder. Withdrawal is riskier. Losses mount faster than replacements can arrive. And beneath it all, the psychological toll grows. Night used to bring confidence. Now it brings dread. In officers' messes and quiet cabins, veterans speak in lowered voices. They remember the early months of the war, Savo Island, Java Sea, when Japanese night tactics crushed Allied fleets. Those victories feel like memories from another era. The Americans learned, and then they changed the game. On U.S. ships, a different transformation is underway. Radar information is no longer treated as a supplement. It is the foundation. Combat information centers expand. Officers specialize. Decisions are made faster, cleaner, with fewer words. Gunnery becomes mathematical, almost surgical. Young American officers with little sea time outperform enemy captains with decades of experience. Not because they're braver or smarter, but because they fight with better information. It is unsettling even for them. One American radar officer later recalls the strange detachment of watching blips vanish from the screen after a salvo lands. No screams, no flames, just the disappearance of a target. Victory reduced to a fading echo. By late 1943, Japanese radar finally begins appearing in greater numbers. Sets are installed, crews are trained, but integration is uneven and doctrine struggles to keep up. Some captains trust it, others don't. Many still rely on their eyes, believing radar can fail at the worst moment. Sometimes they are right, but American radar networks are layered, redundant, improving every month. When one set fails, another takes over. When weather worsens, radar becomes stronger, not weaker. The margin closes, but never disappears. In the darkness of the Central Pacific, American ships now move with quiet assurance. They maneuver without lights. They open fire without warning. They disengage before the enemy can respond. What once felt experimental now feels inevitable. Japanese commanders adapt as best they can. They shift tactics. They lean harder on torpedoes. They attempt bold night runs. Some succeed. Many do not, because no matter how skilled the crew, no matter how experienced the captain, you cannot outmaneuver an enemy who sees you before you exist. The final irony cuts deepest. The Imperial Japanese Navy built its identity on night combat supremacy. It invested in training, discipline, and human excellence. The Americans invested in machines and in teaching ordinary sailors how to use them together. And machines do not forget lessons learned in blood. As 1944 approaches, Japanese officers look ahead with growing unease. Radar has already taken the night. Soon, it will guide carrier strikes, amphibious landings, and entire armadas across the Pacific. The realization settles slowly, but it settles completely. This war will not be decided by who fights better in the dark. It will be decided by who controls information. And the Americans are turning that control into something far more dangerous than surprise. They're turning it into inevitability. June 19th, 1944. The Philippine Sea. The sun sets in a haze of smoke and cloud, bleeding orange into the ocean. 4 Japanese naval aviators and surface commanders alike. Nightfall once promised a pause, a chance to regroup, reposition, survive until dawn. Now it offers no such mercy. American carrier groups move in disciplined silence, radar antennas slowly rotating, feeding a constant stream of data into plotting rooms deep within steel hulls. Contacts appear and vanish. Bearings adjust. Courses change. Entire task forces maneuver like single organisms, guided by invisible threads of information. Japanese reconnaissance aircraft fail to find them. On the flagship of the Japanese mobile fleet, officers argue over conflicting reports. American carriers were here. No, they were there. No visual confirmation. Radar contacts come and go, unreliable, cluttered, difficult to interpret. The confidence that once anchored command decisions is gone. That night, Japanese pilots prepare for what may be their last chance. They launch into darkness, trusting training and courage more than instruments. Many never return. Some become lost, circling empty ocean until fuel runs dry. Others stumble into American formations they never knew were there, met not by surprise, but by prepared defenses. Radar-directed night fighters rise to meet them. On American carriers, deck crews work under blackout conditions, guided by dim lights and practice motions. Landing signals officers talk pilots down using radar vectors. Fighters touch down on pitching decks in darkness that would have been unthinkable 2 years earlier. The night has been mastered, mechanized, standardized, repeated. 4 Japanese officers watching from afar. The truth is undeniable. The enemy does not fear darkness. The enemy uses it. The Imperial Navy's final surface engagements echo the same pattern. In Leyte Gulf, Japanese forces attempt deception, bold maneuvers, sacrificial runs. But radar tracks them across hundreds of miles. Submarines vector in. Aircraft strike at night and in poor weather. There is no hiding anymore. In private diaries, Japanese officers write of a war that feels increasingly unreal. They maneuver flawlessly, follow doctrine, execute orders, only to be intercepted, anticipated, destroyed. It is as if the Americans are reading from the same map, but with the next page already turned. One officer writes simply, "The sea has become transparent." By 1945, radar is everywhere. On picket destroyers, on submarines, on aircraft, on shore installations guiding fleets toward islands the Japanese once thought unreachable. The transformation is complete. Night no longer divides victor from victim. Technology does. The men who once believed skill could overcome any disadvantage now face a world where skill is multiplied or erased by machines. Courage remains. Sacrifice remains. But control has shifted permanently. And standing on the decks of aging cruisers and battered destroyers, Japanese officers finally understand what happened that night off Guadalcanal in 1942. It wasn't an ambush. It was a preview. A glimpse into a future where wars are fought by those who see first, decide first, strike first, long before the enemy knows the battle has begun. The American radar screens glow softly in the dark, indifferent, precise, relentless. The night is still black, but it is no longer blind.